You're in the water loop.
Waterloop. Welcome to Waterloop, the nonprofit news outlet exploring solutions for sustainability in water. I'm the host, Travis Loop. AI is moving fast, and it's already reshaping communications, marketing, and storytelling, including in the environmental space. In this episode, digital transformation expert Shama Hyder explains how AI is disrupting workflows, changing job roles, and opening up powerful tools for content creation and audience engagement. You'll hear why communicators should be using AI right now and why waiting is no longer an option. Shama, it is so good to see you again. I say again because I kind of worked with you to have you as the keynote speaker at WEFTech in the fall of 2022. So that's over 2.5 years ago. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Travis. And yeah, thanks for championing for me back then. And it was really, what a cool experience. And, got to understand and get a little peek at the crazy world of water. And, it's funny. It's like air, and yet it gets so little airtime. So yeah, that was a very, very fun experience.
Yeah, I always kind of wonder about your perspective because you get invited to speak to all these different organizations on all these different issues all around the world, right? And so I was like, okay, what impression did the water utility space leave on you from that that keynote and that experience?
Yeah, so I'll say it was a couple of things. One, of how underrated it is, right? It's just, again, because you think about it and you look at water and it's one of those things. It's like electricity, or we take it for granted, but the moment there's a disruption, right, it dawns on you as to how important it is. So I just think we take it for granted in the modern world, like that there's working sewage and that we have clean water and we have but really there's such an ecosystem. So I think that for me was one, right? To be able to say, wow, this is all happening around us, and it's just something most of us don't think about. And the second thing, Travis, was how many passionate people make up the ecosystem. And look, as you mentioned, I speak all over the world. I've spoken in 24, 25 countries now.
Wow.
And I get to meet so many interesting people and exposed to different industries, and like such a passion, and such a privilege to get to talk to people and see like what, from water to manufacturing to healthcare to you name it, to fintech. And so I was just really blown away by how much passion people have who are in the industry, because I think, connected to the first part, they see that they they understand what most people overlook. And really some of the friendliest folks I've ever met. I mean, I was out at a bar in New Orleans and having oysters with some of those folks, and got to be able to chat with folks at the trade show. Anyways, it was really fulfilling. I mean, I think that was the cool part, is sometimes when you see these industries that all characterize, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but just mundane, right? They're not the sexiest of things, but they're critical and infrastructure. You often find folks that are a little disconnected, like it's a job and they're doing it. But what I found that was so different in the water sphere is how engaged the people were, and that they understood the vitality and the meaningfulness, right, of what they were doing, which is really cool. So anyways, I don't know if that's helpful and answers your question.
It's awesome. You just everybody listening knows you just drilled like the top talking points for everybody in the sector, for every utility leader,
awesome.
Every company executive. It's like, these are the things they say about how important it is, how passionate we are, all that. So amazing that those are your takeaways. One of my takeaways was you talking about dark social. And the idea that, I mean, as a communications person myself, I can't count the reach of my content just off of those impressions and engagements and likes and shares and comments, right? There's people see it, they hear it, and then they go and they share it in other ways I can't measure, including through in-person reaction. And that can be frustrating to people that need those metrics, but it's also really heartening all the times I've had since then of people coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I listened to your podcast," or "I love that one video." And like, I really didn't remember seeing them engage with it, but the fact that they say that means like even a lot more to me. So super cool.
Yeah, and it's gotten stronger since, I mean, even when I spoke, and the term's not new. Dark social, the term's been around, it was coined in like, I think back in 2014 by a reporter in the Atlantic. So, but really, I think we get to see, I think the term was a little early for its time. And the idea is that the novelty of the internet has worn off. And so we consume publicly, but we share privately. And so you think about all the people who are watching your content and listening even to this, what a small percentage, if any, question mark, are going to message us after and say, "Hey, I heard you on this thing and I thought that was really cool," or whatnot. And it just doesn't happen, right, Travis? Like, think about all the things we consume. So if you're listening to this, watching this, think about the scroll and how many things you're consuming and reading and articles from work and personal and all this, and how little of that you actually engage with publicly. And so it generally has to be something that it elicits such an emotional reaction, which is why often I think the internet looks also, I will say, meaner or more contentious than I think it actually is, because those are the things that are getting public responses, where the majority of the stuff we all share with like the same three people that we know through DMs. So it's through Slack channels, it's through these conversations and communication, and that's not happening where you see it. So I've often said consumption is engagement. Like, you're aiming for consumption, because this is not the internet of yesteryear.
Yeah, super insightful. And I still have to figure out how to leverage that theory with my sponsors and funders, but we can have that conversation on the side.
Well, I'll tell you very simply,
Okay.
is that they need to understand this concept. And really, it's funny because a lot of the metrics that we've called vanity metrics are actually true value metrics. So reach, impressions, amount of time listened to, like, these are very valuable metrics, but you have to realize that for the long, even now, the companies that stand to make trillions of dollars, like the Googles and the Metas of the world, it is in their best interest to say, forget about these metrics. Let us give you the real.
Right.
And
right.
so
Yes.
they're creating the itch than they are able to scratch, so to speak. But the truth is that there's real power in those metrics. And it's not just about, because for most content that is not, that's not abrasive, that is educational at heart, that teaches versus tries to elicit a certain ire of people, is not going to get those public comments, right? That's just not. Think about all the podcasts you listen to and all the things that, again, you consume. You're just not engaging in the same way. So I think that for the longest, it's sad, but I think the idea of views and impressions has been so maligned, and they're really important metrics. Like, you need to see who's, are people actually watching and listening? And I think those are very key. And now we're going towards an AI world. And so, that changes even more, as you're not going to get the same, not even the engagement, but not even the same amount of traffic, so to speak, because you're now looking at it much more from a perspective of, recommendations and search, like that AI engines. And so part of the sponsors, and really all brands should be thinking about is, and I do think legacy brands have a real advantage here, is how are we going to show up in that? How, are we the answer to the problem of our customer? And what does that look like?
Fascinating. Well, thank you for bringing up AI, because that is really the thrust of our conversation here today. As I have followed you for the past few years, you have really, I think, leaned into analyzing and sharing insights as to what's happening with AI, and especially when it comes to communications and marketing. And for the audience, we are going to bring this home to the environmental and water field here. And I have no idea how you are keeping up with such a rapidly changing landscape. It's, and without giving away your secrets completely, just how are you doing that? And why is this such a priority for you?
Yeah, gosh, no. And I really don't gatekeep much. I won't say everything because it's like, I don't gatekeep much. And so I'm more than happy to share. Look, this is a labor of love, just like so much of what you do, Travis, is for you. I am passionate about tech and the difference that I think it can make. And I do believe it's a force multiplier. I think it's a force multiplier for good. I'm very pro technology. And I'm very pro human and technology, right? Because pro technology for the sake of technology doesn't make sense. Like the point of being pro technology is that it helps mankind and it helps humankind. And so I tend to have very rose colored glasses through all of this. And I'm happy to, by the way, share with you where I think all this is it's going and what scares me and what I'm excited about. But a big part of it's a couple of things. One is I'm in the trenches. I mean, I spend a good 3 to 4 hours a day reading academic journals and articles and things. Like I'm very immersed in it because it's my job and I'm required, right, to do that. I think what also helps is because I do so much media correspondence work and I write a column for Inc. and Martech. I get a lot of press releases. I get a lot of here's what's early, here's what's happening. So that allows me. So that's one layer. Two is I'm a practitioner. So I am vibe coding. I am vibe marketing. I am using all these tools. Like I am in it. And so, I do things. My kids come home from school. I spend a little time with them. And then when they're asleep, I kind of go back like at nighttime and I'm, in the trenches. So there's not a shortcut here to say like, I follow this blog and I get all my, it's very different. And, being early to social media, it's very reminiscent, except the pace is so much staggeringly greater than anything before.
Wow.
It's just massive. It's not like, yeah, the joke used to be like, what changed while we were sleeping? And now I'm like, forget sleep. Like things are happening so fast. And so, yeah, so I mean, it is both being a practitioner, it is being early and in a position to see a lot of these things. I also do a bit of investing, and so I get a lot of startup pitches and so forth. So I get sort of like sense of the ecosystem, and then of course I'm working with clients, right? So I see how it applies to different industries and able to like look at how things work for the healthcare, manufacturing, and just connect the dots. And so that's the short answer: is I'm really in the trenches, and this is what I encourage for everyone who's in AI and or is if you are human and in the working world, this is important, is that you are immersing yourself. Like, I think too many people treat it very preciously. Like, with social media, when it first came out, it was like, you want to be careful because if you post something, it could be made public. And there was a lot of learning, right, that we did. And you saw the stories and like teachers posted something about their personal life. And the next thing they know, like, they're out of a job. There's just a lot of things. So I think we've developed a certain social media etiquette, right? Because like a lot of learnings, but I think people also thought like, oh, there's room for error, there's room for, but AI is not like that. So because so much of this stuff is you have to throw yourself into it and play with it. And I often think the best way to start is through your personal and then bridge it to your professional. So when people are really hesitant or just not, I'm like, use it to plan your next summer trip. Use it to manage your kids' schedules. Use it to come up with a bedtime story. And I think that sort of playfulness and seeing how it works in your personal life feels very low stakes. And then you can move that to your professional.
Yeah, absolutely. Super, super interesting. I certainly am experimenting with it in a lot of ways, but I feel like I am just not even the tip of the iceberg. Like I am just having a little sliver, a shaving of the ice, and I need to find a way to like explore and adopt more of it, especially in content production and all the different things I'm doing. But again, something I can maybe you'll have some tips here actually in this conversation because I wanted to ask you about how AI is impacting comms and marketing. Given that's your strong background, now you're studying AI. What's happening? From especially to the practitioner side, the people that are doing comms and marketing. How is AI changing
In a
that?
really big way, right? I This is massive, and I don't think this gets talked about enough because people say, well, AI will take jobs, and then others say, oh, it'll create jobs. And like both of those are true. The timelines for those are very different. AI will take jobs before it creates jobs. And so that's the stark reality is in the next 5 years, we see a lot more loss of jobs, especially knowledge workers, right? You're talking lawyers, you're talking entry level professionals, you're talking just a lot of things that required human beings. And it'll be in the order of what's the easiest to, like, for example, transcription, which is almost all of it has become automated, right? So that's one level, and then you keep going. And so I think entry level jobs are actually the most affected. It's a very different trajectory. I
Hmm.
think AI creates more jobs in the 15 to 20-year timeline, but what happens with that gap?
Hmm.
What happens within that? And so those are real questions. I think, I don't think agencies will look like agencies. I don't know how that model as it stands right now works. And what I see is most companies fall in kind of two buckets. You have companies that are um, in a frenzy laying off people and they're like, AI can do it all. And they are being very hasty in that. And these are the same companies, I think, in like 6 months, we see them rehiring a lot because they're like, oh, wait, never mind. Like that was, very, and then, and then you have companies that are just doing nothing, right? And they're the ones that risk irrelevance and their competition is. So a lot, actually, it's funny, a lot of my work these days, Travis, is revolving around this idea of strategic urgency and why we need that. In fact, I developed a whole new keynote around this, which is, so much of this is panic and pause, but we need to find that sweet spot because we have to be responsive. And if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching this, then I have a good feeling that you will do okay because you are learning. And so I think what you have to even look at from like how if I was right out of school and even graduating, I think about not just internships but apprenticeships. How can I be an
Hmm.
apprentice to someone? How can I, because I just think a lot of these skills that we were like, oh, you come into the workplace and we'll teach you this. No, it'll be expected that you have those skills when you enter the workplace. And so I think what entry level looks like is going to be dramatically, it'll just be different. Our entry level will not look like entry level because you have
I heard
AI that can do a lot of that.
I
Um,
was listening to some podcast and they were using the phrase, are they is this person AI native? Like, is it a language or a skill set that they have? Referring to the
yeah.
workforce now, like, oh, we're looking for people that are AI native, meaning they're
Yeah.
comfortable
Well,
with it.
AI native is a little unfair because AI native is my 4 and 6 year olds, right? Like, I mean, that really,
You're right. Yeah.
Gen Alpha, like the kids that are born, I mean, really, they are AI native. None of
Mm,
us in the workplace are AI native because native assumes, like, I'm a digital native, right? I grew up
mm,
in the age of social and internet, and I was that like last bit of landline to mobile. I remember some of us had pagers in high school. So, but my kids are AI native because a lot of what they're finding is even how we use AI, a lot of us in the workplace, you start to use it like Google, right? But
yeah.
the way these kids, like my kids are AI natives, the way they use AI is very different because they'll say, like, my son will come in and we'll make a video on, Sora, and it'll be like a flying train or something. Then he'll be like, okay, but now I want to add music and I want to do this and I want to share. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, you can't do all that. And he's like, why not? And so they're, versus we're like, this is so cool. We made a
Right.
flying train. And
Yeah.
they're
And they're like,
asking,
no,
why not? Um,
this is how we go to the next level. Yeah, absolutely.
yes. So they
Super
are the
cool.
true AI natives.
Yeah, and I loved one of the points you had earlier too about if you sit back and just watch this, you're left behind as an individual or as an organization, right? Like AI is here. It's inevitable. The quicker you get with it, the more you can be in the game. It's like trying to ignore the internet when it came around, or trying to ignore social media, right? You just get left behind. So adapt, adopt, and go. I think. Um, One of my questions was about like those comms and marketing jobs, like should people be concerned?
Yes.
Good. Honesty is
Yeah,
good
no,
here. We don't need to
no,
sugarcoat it.
and
Yeah.
people like say, oh, the phrase is like, AI won't take your job, someone who uses AI will. And I'm like, even that's
Mm,
not fully correct, because I think AI changes the entire, um, you know, workflow and the entire organizational chart. It's not that AI will, your role will not look like your role. And so that's what I said when when you talk about entry level jobs, you're not going to have entry level jobs will be like your, what we consider now middle, like the next level, your junior or middle level, because a lot of those skills. And so I think the hardest industry to be in right now, like if you're really serious about it, is actually education. And I
mm,
say it's the hardest because you had like millions and hundreds of, like, so millions of years education has been around, right? And but the last, like, let's say hundreds of years, you had the same approach. Like, you teach kids math and science, and then I think the last great like jump or innovation was the calculator, which is, you're like, oh, now, math teachers protested against that too, because they're like, oh, they're using a calculator. But I always tell people, like, I'm like, have we had more progress since we had the calculator, or less,
yeah.
scientifically speaking? And so everyone's like,
More.
no, 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 we've had way more scientific progress. Well, so I think AI is very similar. It only gives us more progress. It only gives us more runway to do things. But this is going to be a reckoning for the world, Travis. This is
Mm,
beyond just, like, we're talking roles and jobs, but this is so much bigger. We have trained all our lives to be like logical, and the more knowledge you retain, the better. And now, when that is no longer the the differentiator, no longer the point of distinction, no longer the leverage, then it's funny, because what's left is actually all the skills that we have been poo-pooing in the corporate world,
mm,
especially the soft skills, right? Because they're
mm,
like, the empathy, the curiosity, the ability to ask good questions, the because that's what I'm encouraging with my kids. It's not knowing the answers, it's they get rewards when they ask good questions, because I'm
mm.
convinced that they will have plenty of tools to help them find answers, but will they ask the right questions?
Oh my
This is
gosh.
a very different, and that's why I say education. Whew, that's a whole different.
Well, yeah. I mean, like you think of high school and college where they're like, oh, professors are finding out kids use Chat GPT to write papers. I mean, what do you expect them to do at this
Yeah,
point
and you
now?
should encourage
Like,
it. And this is what I mean. Like, as long as education continues to do it in the way they have, it's not going to work. I mean, in fact, you should just reverse it and say, good, I want ChatGPT to write your first version. Now you come
mm,
in and tell me how it could be better. Now you tell me where it could, like, if I'm a professor, I'm like, yes, you will write this first draft with ChatGPT. I want it to write it. Now I want you to go back and see where it has faults in logic and reasoning. Where would you strengthen it? Because that's the world they're going into. It doesn't make sense to, it's just like the calculator. But, like, don't force them to keep solving these things that the calculator can solve. That's not impressive. Up that level. That's your
yeah.
baseline. Congratulations. Now make it better. And I
Mm,
think that's, the world is going to be very meritocratic. I worry for people who are not self-starters. I worry for people who do not have agency. I worry for people who don't have that motivation, that drive, that hunger, that imagination. And you know what, Travis? I I love our industry. I love, marketing and comms. And you and I both know that there's plenty of people who don't have that.
Oh,
in our world.
oh,
And that's
sure.
going to be very hard. So
Hmm.
I think anybody who has those things, who's able to learn, who is able to be strategic, who's able to connect dots, who's able to get along with others and is a positive person to be around and is not I mean, I think these skills will matter even more and more.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a lot of reflection on myself. I'm like, okay, what am I doing that AI or a robot can't do yet? Make sure I lean into those things. And let's use the tools where they are. I also make sure I say, use my manners with AI, just so, the day the robot knocks on my door, it'll know I was one of the polite ones. Yeah,
Yeah, I
I don't
know.
know.
It's funny we think about that, but it's very, again, it's a different language. We're all learning to, and I will tell you, I'm not so worried about, like, most people are worried about the wrong thing. They're worried about like
Mm.
robots taking over. It's like I'm sorry, that's dumb. That's really,
Too many movies. Too many movies. Yeah.
Yes, and I get where the fear comes from. Just like when you're in the water and you think Jaws, and right, like Hollywood has done as no. Anyways, I get it, but that shouldn't be your greatest fear. Logically, actually, the much greater fear is that we prefer our digital lives to our personal lives, our physical
Mm.
lives, and so
Mm.
I think the best antidote to tech is build more parks, build more physical locations where people want to meet, build more things where people want to engage and be and and fully be present. And I just feel
Well,
like that, yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about my son loving his Minecraft world so much and having an AI girlfriend and doing and living in his virtual reality 20 where he is disconnected from humans
yeah.
and human world, like our physical world. That is a much more probable scenario and
Mm.
something we should be working towards than like this bizarre, robots will kill us in our sleep thing.
Yeah, I mean, as a parent, also, I share that same concern. I'm like, look at the real world is pretty damn amazing too. If you go out there and explore it, you don't need a
Yeah.
fake world online. And
Yeah. I mean, I think books
but
like The Comfort Crisis have been great. I think the idea that like we're getting so used to no friction. I mean, that's the hard part is like when everything is, now I was just looking at a company, they're doing drone deliveries in Dallas in Arizona I mean, you can order something and have it within minutes, drone
mm,
delivered to your doorstep. And like, if that's the world our kids are growing up in, but relationships so require there's a lot of friction, right? You
mm,
have to communicate, you need
yeah.
patience, like so that's what I said, those skills I think are going to be so in demand is the ability to kind of engage.
I mean, and I've noticed that missing in people in their teens, late teens, early 20s as I've interacted with them. Like there's that their preference is those phones and
And you have to
not really
force it. I mean, like
understanding.
the,
Yeah.
when I make my son go knock on doors and ask for things all the time, like we'll go to a friend's house and I drop him off and he'll be, wait, look at me. And he's like 5. And I'm like, nope, you got to go knock on the door, ring the bell, say,
Yeah.
say, hello,
Yeah.
Miss Erica. Is Mikey home? Like you got to go do these things. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I do a lot of what I call, that's not the best term for it, but, peek around the corners parenting where I like let him have independence where I'm not far, but I want him to engage with the real world and not feel like when we go to the doctor, I mean my kids are 4 and 5. Doctor walks in, their pediatrician, and I'm like, and they look at me and I'm like, no, that's your patient. Ask them what's wrong. Like,
But,
if you need
yep.
help, mommy will jump in, but you are fully able to tell the doctor where it hurts and you should have that conversation. And so I mean these are the things where again I'm very I think I mean to a fault I'm probably very independent. My husband is too, so we've bred 2 very independent children. But I do think these are the skill sets that are going to be very helpful in the future, not necessarily like who can memorize the most, which for the longest time was the moat.
Yeah. Well, let me kind of shift and ask you two questions here about how people in comms and marketing, especially in the environmental field, how can they tap into AI? There's so many different ways, but if they do not want to be left behind, if they want to get engaged, what's your advice? What are the ways to do it? Maybe where to start.
Yeah.
Just
So it's funny because I actually just wrote this like applied AI playbook, which I made very practical, and I'll give you the link to it, Travis, so you can put it in your
perfect.
notes for anybody that wants to have it. If you go to shama.substack.com, I'll also share it there. I have a Substack called The Hyder Ground where I talk about a lot of these things. And so, and Marcom is, of course, one of my favorite subjects to be able to chat about. So I think what you start looking at is what are the things that you're doing all the time? Like what are routine tasks? Like I said, you have to start engaging. If you are not using ChatGPT, if you're not using Claude, if you're not using that is what's getting you behind. Part of this is you've got to learn by doing. And like you said, with social media, there was a fear that you could make mistakes. There's not that fear here. Like, so what? Of course. And so, yes, you probably will mess up, and okay, that's just like, when you're learning a language, of course you're going to get it wrong, but that's how you learn. And so, one, I'd say doing is a big part of it. Two, I would think about what are those activities that you do very routinely, and I'll give you some examples and kind of how we use or I've used, again, really simple things. When you have a meeting and you have transcripts, and all of us, if you're in Marcom, you probably do follow-ups, right? You have a template. I mean, you could go, and ideally you create your own GPT. It's not hard. You could go to ChatGPT and create a custom GPT, and you say, this is how I like my follow-up emails. This is how I engage. This is a template. You give it your voice, you teach it. And now anytime you have a meeting, you put the transcript in, and it'll create a follow-up email based on that, based on what you've trained it. And so now you've solved that one thing, right? And there's just so many things like that where you can, your fastest way to use AI is look at your current workflow and find ways to make your current workflow more efficient. Your next step is then to create newer levels to where you're changing your workflow. But I think the easiest way is to find current ways to, another example that I give people and they sort of love is, on your team, you have different people. So your CFO is looking for very different takeaways from whatever your campaigns were. Then your CEO wants the high level, your COO might something else. You can do this. You can take the same information you've put together, feed it to AI and say, these are the 3 different folks on my team. Give me a version for each of them, right? Where before, like, what you had was what they got, but now you can really communicate and give each person that. Like I'm using this app right now with my kids called Ello to help them read, like hello without the H, and it listens, so it'll hear them read and then it'll help them based on what it's hearing, right? Which is really cool. And so I think, again, personalization, like what everyone in Marcom talks about, well, now's your chance. Now you have the tools to do that. So those are just some like easy ways that I would think about looking at AI.
That's awesome. I'll share some of mine to lift back the curtain on my side, which I think hits on a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, I think the key is using that AI or that LLM to let you teach it. It's like your assistant. It learns the style that you like, the language that you like, the format you like. And, you spend a little time on the front end, putting that stuff in, and then it greases the skids for you, right? So like the transcripts that get generated from this conversation will get fed into AI and it will generate the description for the episode, right?
Yes.
The AI will pick a half dozen good clips from this episode.
Yeah.
Like
there's a great tool for that called Opus AI. And it will take a long form content and it will chop it using AI for multiple social videos, which is great.
Yeah. And some of the stuff isn't perfect yet, but it's getting better every single day.
Totally. But the only way you're going to know is if you start, right? And I don't think you wait to say, oh, I'll wait. No. It's you. This stuff is moving so fast.
Yeah.
And so you have to engage. And I would say if you were a leader, it's very important. I mean, when I go into organizations and I'm pulled in, I think the smart leaders are doing that. They're saying, come teach our teams on how to do this. Come, like I was just here and I spoke to the Dance Owners Association, really great group, and these are studio owners and they're they're in the arts, they're in performing arts. Most of them didn't start one because they thought, let me be wildly rich. They started it because they were like, I love dance and I want to be able to share this passion. But, AI can help with, and so I walked them through how you can use it for people, for personalization, for processes. And, you can do that for really every organization. So again, I'll give you that link that you can share, Travis, on the applied AI,
your
playbook.
presentation.
And I think that'll be
good. That's awesome. That's one of the things that caught my attention. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is just, some tools and tips for people to get on this train here. Cause it's moving and it's going no matter what.
It's so fun.
One of the things I know people always ask me, and I'll just close with this, is like getting their supervisors buy-in, right? Like always trying to get, okay, I want to use this stuff, or I need permission to use it, or I need to, to subscribe to this. Like, how can people make the case?
Yeah, pay the $20 and do it yourself.
I
mean, this is the very entrepreneur part of me. Like, I just like, I'll give you an example.
I love it.
I was at an event in Singapore, and I was actually an attendee for this part of this fellowship thing that we as part of, which is really an amazing experience. But we were in Singapore, and there's like 22 of us or so, and people are just complaining about the snacks. They're like, oh, they don't have good snacks, and about like half a day of complaining for snacks. So at break time, another buddy of mine is an entrepreneur as well, and we're like, let's just go across the street. I mean, Singapore has so many places, and we'll just buy a ton of snacks. We just bought bags and bags of snacks, and we just like loaded up all the tables. And these guys came back and they were like, oh, they listened to the feedback, they got us snacks. And I was just like, what? Anyone could just go buy this. And so I think that is it's just not a good excuse. And
solve your own problem. Solve your own problem.
And this is so important, especially, again, this is what I'm saying too, about when there aren't going to be internships and like the way we think of them. There's no like fetch coffee and get the dry cleaning. And let's face it, people haven't wanted to do those types of things anyways, but they're just not going to be those skills, because it's not like sit in the meeting and take notes. I don't need you to sit in the meeting and take notes. I don't need you to send a follow-up email. Like, I don't need you to manage my inbox. So there's so many things. And so I think Gen Alpha, more than anything, will have to just have a lot more hustle and be entrepreneurial. I mean, it doesn't matter if you work within an organization. You have to be the captain of your career, and you cannot let any manager, anyone stop you from doing this.
I love it.
I mean, yeah.
Well, that's all right. More great advice from you 2.5 years after I got a batch of it at WEFTech. I'm in my late 40s and channeling all this advice and the entrepreneur stuff and the hustle. And people like you, the information you put out, your grind always inspires me. So thanks for your time and insight, Shama. Good to see you.
Thanks, Travis. Always wonderful to chat with you. And hopefully this was valuable for folks listening.
You're in the water loop.